Welcome back, Bucs fans. Did you get the chance to take a deep breath and relax during the bye week? We hope so. This is another rendition of A Few Extra Bucs, your podcast on our website, pewterpirates.com. We'd first like to thank our title sponsors who've been so good to us since we launched this project about 3 months ago. In terms of the podcast, we've had the website for well over a year now, but our title sponsors are House of Brews, a great place in Lutz on the corner of Northdale, Mabry, and Van Dyke, and our friends, our other title sponsor, Sea Dog Brewing Company, great locations in Clearwater and on the beach in Treasure Island. Listen, I'm going to bring in our producer, Justin Thomas, and our great Buccaneer insider, Roy Cummings. First, Justin, how was the bye week for you?
It was pretty good, particularly after last night's game. That was a pretty amazing moment to watch.
Yeah,
live TV.
Bree's doing his thing, huh?
Yeah.
Roy, how was your bye week?
It was good. Always like the opportunity to watch other teams and focus on them a little bit more than the Buccaneers in a way to kind of compare and contrast. You know, what I'm seeing with the Bucs. Am I seeing that with other teams? You know, what's coming up, that kind of thing. So it was good. Got an opportunity to, take a Sunday off and sit back and watch football in a different way for a change. So I like it.
Well, you know what? We'll delve into the Falcons. That's the Bucs' next opponent in our next podcast. This is more of kind of a rehash of the State of the Union with this Bucs team as they trudge on after the bye week. But I think when we look at the NFC South, I mean, Justin talked about the Saints game. You touched on watching other teams. I mean, this NFC South, to me, I don't know, the Bucs are really in the middle. I mean, the Saints are kind of pulling away a little bit. Then you have the Falcons that are just not looking good at all, getting hammered by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the one wild card, we may have touched on this last time, I'm still trying to figure out the Carolina Panthers because the Giants are not a good football team, and they barely escaped at home with the win over the struggling Giants. I can't really figure out Carolina. I feel like I have a read on the other teams, though, somewhat.
I'm kind of with you. I think we know what the Saints are, good. And I'll admit, I'm a little surprised. After 3 straight years of 7-9 and 1 year of 9-7 and winning the division, I honestly thought that, well, you know what? Who are they really? Going back to the mean, they're probably more of a middle, of an 8-8 type team. But no, they're playing extremely good football right now. The Falcons, obviously, struggling like crazy on defense, partially because of injuries. So they're hurting. And, yeah, I'm with you on Carolina. I picked Carolina to win this division during one of the segments I did on Bay News 9 here in Tampa, Spectrum Sports. I know you do that as well, Mike, and you and I have done it together a couple times. But they were, we were asked who we picked as the NFC South champs, and I actually picked Carolina. I still think they can do it. But you're right, based on what we saw on Sunday against the Giants, they got some areas to clean up. But of course, everybody does in the division.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this Bucs team right now. Obviously, our people who jump on the podcast want Bucs first, and that's what we try to give you. And we appreciate the support in this podcast. It has grown so much in the last 3 months. We just passed our 30th show, so this is show number 31. It's a time of reflection for the coaching staff. Dirk Cutter did admit he went fishing, didn't catch as many fish as he wanted to, but he did go fishing, got away from football a little bit. But they look at a lot of film, not only from the past games, but the most recent game, and they didn't throw away the film on that. Maybe that would be good advice for them on the debacle that was the Bears game. But here's Dirk Cutter on looking at the film and prepping for the Falcons.
As coaching staff, when you look at everything, you're gonna look at it till you think you got to figure it out, whether you do or you don't. I mean, you're gonna try to. So, we'll try to implement some things that we did. I mean, I'm not going to really come out and say what they are, but we'll try to implement some things and get them ready for this week at Atlanta.
What do you think of that? I guess that's what you want to hear from your coach, is kind of coach speak a little bit. But you've covered the NFL for a long time. What do you think these coaches really do during the bye week, Roy?
Well, I think Dirk was actually very honest. You hear this kind of a catchphrase now, byword, however you want to describe it, but self-scouting. It's what you do in the bye week. You look back at no matter how much you've played, whether it's 4 games for the Bucs or 7 or 8 for other teams. You look back at the most recent stretch of games in particular, usually the last quarter of games, and you say, all right, what are we doing well? And what are we doing poorly? Primarily, what are we doing poorly? Because, what you're doing well, you just say, okay, keep doing that. But you look at what are we not achieving? What aren't we getting done? And with the Buccaneers, look, you don't have to be a coach in the NFL to figure it out. They're not stopping teams. They're not stopping them against the run. They're not stopping their passing game. They're not stopping them in the red zone, and they're not running the ball very well. So those are the issues that have to be corrected. And so I'm sure that's what they spent. And they probably, the coaches probably spent 3, 4, maybe even 5 days on it, and took the weekend off and said, all right, rest up, and we'll get back at it on Monday. And if you come back with any fresh ideas, we'll take them. But I'm sure they looked almost 90% at what was going on with the defense and tried to figure out what do we do there.
Well, speaking of one of the things you touched on that they're struggling on is the running game. Not good at all, and it really shows how impressive the passing game has been because they haven't had any balance with the running game at all. But it seems Dirk Cutter isn't panicking about the lack of a running game.
We have goals for every down and distance area, for every breakdown area that we'd like to be hitting in efficiency-wise. And if you're not hitting those, you try to fix them. But again, at the same time, there's a point of banging your head against the wall too, right? There's a point of sometimes you got to just go with what works and not worry about it. Again, I think a lot of teams are pass first teams now, and there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, really, all that matters is at the end of the game.
Well, today the Jacksonville Jaguars picked up Jamal Charles, really because of injury with Leonard Fournette. They want a stopgap guy there. No Le'Veon Bell pickup by the Bucs. They're not panicking. They're not reaching for veterans, Roy. But Dirk Cutter very honest right there about the state of his offense.
Yeah, he is. And, it's not special right now. Averaging 3.1 yards per game in the running game, obviously knocking it out of the park as a passing team. He's right. It's a pass-happy NFL right now. And, so if you're not running the ball, but you're still scoring, 40 points or more in half your games, as the Bucs are you really that worried? Yeah, you are to a degree. But I also think that they're pretty confident that as time goes on, Peyton Barber is going to catch fire, that Ronald Jones is going to start to figure things out a little bit. I'm not sure you can hope for much more from Jacquizz Rodgers, or I'm not sure Sean Wilson's going to provide much. But at the end of the day, I mean, look, we've seen Peyton Barber run exceptionally well in the NFL before. He did it last year, even did it a little bit before the year before. And he certainly did it in training camp in the preseason this year. That ability is there. I think he'll be okay. I also think Ronald Jones will figure things out. So I don't think there's a great reason to be too concerned about the running game. Again, a lot happens there. It's not just running backs. It's got a lot to do with the line situations that you're in, down and distance, things like that. We've seen Peyton Barber break off a couple of decent runs. He just needs to be a little bit more consistent. The tough thing with the running game, and fans really need to keep this in mind, most runners need to get into a rhythm. They need to get into a groove. And the way you do that is by running the ball and running it consistently. One of the issues you have when you have an offense like the Bucs now, and like a lot of teams in the NFL do have, is you just don't give the running backs that much of an opportunity to run and get into that rhythm and that groove. Without that, it's hard to ask a guy to gain 4+ yards a carry, 5 yards a carry, that kind of thing on a consistent basis. And don't forget, the Bucs, most teams run the ball late in games when they're ahead by a score or two. The Bucs haven't really been in that situation. You go back to the first week, it was tight all the way through. They had a chance to put it away, but a missed kick screwed that up. Second week, similar situation, tight game against the Eagles, really. Then they're playing from behind the whole time against Pittsburgh. Didn't really have an opportunity to run there. And the same from Chicago. So I don't think the opportunities have been there for the running game to really excel and play at the level that it's capable of playing at. So I think there's reason not to be concerned about the running game. And a lot of it has to do with circumstances that the team has faced. I don't think it has to do with the talent or the lack of a commitment to it. Circumstances just dictated that they do some other things. And as a result, the runners haven't really had the opportunity to get into that groove.
Well, Roy, to your point about getting in the rhythm, the perfect example of that, and I covered the New Orleans Saints along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was at the Monday night game where Breeze broke the record in the Superdome, and Mark Ingram returned to the Saints offense. I'm not trying to get off the rails with the Saints, but it proves a point with the Bucs. Mark Ingram, for years, many considered him kind of a bust in New Orleans because he wasn't living up to the first round pick hype. But a big part of that, part of it was health. But another part of that was he was sharing carries with other backs and wasn't getting into that rhythm. Once he became the guy, he really showed off his potential. It'll be interesting to me to see Peyton Barber moving forward when he gets more opportunities, when the game dictates more importance from his standpoint, how he will respond, because Ingram's a perfect example of that. And what you said, once he got the lion's share of the carries and the responsibility, he shined. We'll see about Peyton Barber, I guess.
It's a real good point. And, look at the New England Patriots. They seldom, if ever, have a runner who's in the top of the league in running back, and get yards gained or even maybe rushing average and that kind of thing. And it's not because they're not good running backs. They do have very good running backs, and they usually achieve their objectives in terms of yards per carry and that kind of thing. But don't forget, they're not getting a lot of opportunities either compared to some teams that really emphasize the run. And look, the Bucs, the whole objective is to score points. If the Bucs continue to see opportunities in the passing game that they can take advantage of, they're going to do it. And if it's the running game that suffers because the Bucs scored 42 points today, mostly by passing the ball, well, they're going to continue to pass the ball. So that's kind of what Dirk was alluding to when he said, it's more of a passing game nowadays. That's what the NFL is. It's a passing league, and that being the case, the running game is sometimes going to suffer a little bit, and I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see Peyton Barber because he's a guy that I thought looked good in the preseason. He's kind of bided his time, and we'll see what happens moving forward with the Atlanta Falcons coming up this weekend. Well, a big narrative, of course, during the bye week was fire Mike Smith, get this guy out of here. The defense is horrible. I wouldn't have faulted the Bucs if they did it. You brought up some good points on why they shouldn't, and Dirk Cutter has stood by Mike Smith and has said it's not about loyalty. He wants to keep the continuity going, still believes in Mike Smith, and has also made the point that, Mike Smith's not out there missing tackles and blowing assignments. He reiterated at his press conference this week that Mike Smith is here to stay for the time being.
It's a team game, so that was really my whole point. Is anytime anybody, me included, singles one person out for the cause of all of our problems or the cause of all our success, guess what? That's not right. I mean, it's much more than that.
I know you love that, Roy Cummings.
Well, he's not wrong. That's the thing. He's not wrong. Look, I know fans are frustrated. Fans are upset. Fans always want to cut somebody, fire somebody, bring in the other guy. It just doesn't work that way, that often. I mean, you really, really have to be screwing up. And again, the design may be at fault here a little bit. But again, the players have to execute the plays. And, we've talked about this from the offensive perspective. Everybody talks about, the Bucs are so much better because Todd Monken's calling plays right now. Yeah, well, maybe. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Dirk Cutter came out at the end of the year and said, oh, by the way, it was me calling plays all year long. It wasn't Todd Monken. It just, stayed up to fool everybody. The difference is they're executing the plays properly. We went through that.
Right.
Same with defense. Right now, the defense just isn't executing the plays. Now, there is a history, 19 games out of 36, 400 yards or more, 30 points or more allowed in 15 of those games. The defense has not played well consistently. It has played consistently bad, poorly. It has not done the job under Mike Smith. There's no doubt about that. My thinking, again, is if you want to make that bad situation worse, fire the coordinator. Those who think that Mark Duffner, the defensive genius that he is, would make this a better situation don't understand. Mark Duffner, just because he was once a coordinator and called plays in Cincinnati, doesn't necessarily mean he's cut out to be a coordinator and call plays in Tampa Bay. Mike Smith made it to the level of head coach in this league because of his defensive philosophy, his defensive play calling, his defensive scheme, and now all of a sudden it's not working. Why isn't it working? Well, in my opinion, it's not necessarily a lack of talent. It's not necessarily a result of the scheme that he's put out there. My belief is that the scheme is too difficult for the young, inexperienced players that are being asked to run it right now. As I've said before, 3/4 of the Bucs starting secondary is on the shelf with injuries. And 2 of the rookies who were forced to play in their spot are playing hurt right now. So MJ Stewart, Carlton Davis, and Jordan Whitehead as well. So everybody's playing hurt or is hurt in that secondary. That's going to create a lot of problems. And that's what the Bucs are dealing with more than anything right now.
So if you're a defensive coordinator and you're Mike Smith, Roy, would you just simplify and be more aggressive? Is that the key to turn this around, maybe?
Yeah, I think it is. It may not be as simple as just simplifying into, but if the problem, and look, we heard about this the first year Mike Smith was here. When they went through the first half of the season, it was disaster, much as it is now. It was all about communication. Players on different pages, not knowing exactly what the other one was doing. 2 guys covering one receiver, sometimes 3 covering one receiver, leaving somebody else wide open. They're having the same problems again. And lo and behold, what do we have here? Well, we have a bunch of guys who are new to the scheme. They don't know the scheme that well. So I think that's the problem. How much can you dummy it down? How much can you simplify it? I don't know. But there should be a level at which you can still play a somewhat exotic scheme, something that's going to fool an opposing quarterback or at least some of them, and allow you to execute properly. There's got to be a level there where you can scale it back and everybody can be on the same page so that at least they know where they're going. It starts with that. It starts with the players knowing where they're going and what they're supposed to do with each assignment they're given on each play. You start with that and take it from there, but they've got to reach that level first, and that's what this week and whatever they did last week should have been all about.
Well, we're giving Mike Smith some input. I'm sure he's listening. I know he loves a few extra bucks. But the players are also giving the coaching staff some input. That's part of the bye week, and Dirk Cutter addressed that as well.
I put together just a very short thing that I asked the guys to give me some feedback, and they did an awesome job. I really appreciate their honesty, because sometimes honesty can be self-defeating, so make yourself look bad. But I appreciate their honesty, and the communication, I think both ways, player-coach, coach-player, was good.
Pretty constructive there, Roy.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was kind of interesting that he did that. And you know what? You need – look, it's a team. It can't be us and them. Coaches decide how we play and players play. Everybody should be involved, especially when you've had the kind of, disastrous outcomes that the Bucs have had the last couple of weeks where – they were out of the game at halftime and have been forced to play catch up. That's an opportunity to bring everybody in and say, okay, guys, what are we doing wrong? Tell us. If we're screwing up, let us know. And if the player, I think most players will be very honest. Those that have experience and can say it. A guy like Jason Pierre-Paul, a guy like Gerald McCoy, Levante David, even a Chris Conte who may be hurt, but can still see what's happening. I think those guys, certainly Brent Grimes, those guys are all going to say, hey, I'll tell you what's going wrong. Here's the problem. And my guess is most of those guys probably looked in the mirror and said, look, the problem is not with the coaching staff. It's me. I'm the one who, didn't pick up the check on this play, who didn't communicate the proper switch on this play. That's what it comes down to. And again, to me, that stuff's got to be simplified in order for this to be corrected quickly. But I think that's doable.
Well, Jameis Winston is going to be your starting quarterback, Bucs fans, against the Atlanta Falcons this Sunday at 1 o'clock. And Dirk Cutter, obviously behind his guy who came in the second half, and Dirk admitted they put Jameis in kind of a tough spot. I thought it was the perfect spot for him to step in. There wasn't a lot of pressure. I mean, the game was kind of out of control at that point, and he needs some snaps. Jameis had some ups and some downs in Chicago, but this will be his first start of the season, and here is Dirk Cutter on his quarterback.
I think our team needs to get off to a better start, and I talked about that. That's one of the things I asked the players to give me feedback a week ago today. I asked the players to give me feedback on that, and then I kind of compiled all of that into a few thoughts that I shared with the team today. So I think our team needs to get off to a faster start, and I think Jameis, same as everybody else.
So Jameis, everybody needs to get off to a fast start. Roy, you covered this game. Jameis's first start with Dirk Cutter as a head coach was, oh, by the way, at Atlanta back in the 2 years ago. And, it's funny how times can change. He had 4 touchdown passes in that game. The Bucs won 31-24. How about this? His touchdown passes in that game, Roy, Brandon Myers, Charles Sims, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and Mike Evans.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, hey, he spread the ball around. I'll tell you that. Got a couple of tight ends in there. You got a receiver or two. Running back, good stuff. Look, Jameis Winston completed 80% of his passes last week, or last time he played. 16-20. Nice. I like that. He also had 2 interceptions. But, that's Jameis Winston thinking that he can get the Bucs back into the game and forcing a few things. It was a great opportunity, as you've said, for him to get his feet wet, get a feel for the rush again, get a feel for the speed of the game, develop that, start, getting that chemistry back with his receivers, the whole bit. I think it was a good opportunity. They took good advantage of it. And it turns out that was the plan anyway. Dirk Cutter's plan was, now he didn't expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to do what he did, but his plan all along was to go back to Jameis after week 4, after the bye week, and start him in Atlanta. At this point, I could see why Ryan Fitzpatrick can be upset with that, but I can also see where Dirk Cutter's coming from. At 2-2, I think Dirk makes a good point. This team needs to start faster. Maybe Jameis Winston can give him that spark. I mean, it's not like Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't spark him. He did. But it's more on the defense than anybody else. But I don't think this team is hurt if Jameis Winston is in there at quarterback. I think they're in fine shape there.
Well, the good news for Jameis Winston is this Falcons defense is banged up. And Deion Jones, who's an all-pro linebacker, that guy's a monster in the middle. He's not going to be playing. He's out for the season. And another reason I read off the guys that he threw to in his first game under Dirk Cutter as head coach 2 seasons ago, you have Brandon Myers, you have Charles Sims, you have Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and you have Mike Evans. But now he's got Deshaun Jackson, he's got Cam Brate, he's got Chris Godwin, he's got Adam Humphries. He's got a lot of weapons, Roy, and this Falcons defense is really slumping right now.
This is a game where the Buccaneers should put up 40-plus points. There is no other way around it. They probably will need to. Because of the defense, again, I doubt that they're going to come out and pitch a shutout in Atlanta against Matt Ryan. It just ain't going to happen. I'd be surprised if it does. Let me say that. So that it's going to be a shootout. So the offense needs to take advantage of what it's got and all those weapons, and there's plenty of them, as you pointed out. So Jameis Winston should be pumped for this game. There's a defense out there that is vulnerable right now. You've got to take advantage of that vulnerability and attack. And, it's up to the coaches to come up with a game plan that allows you to do it. But, again, this is a game where they should and probably will have to put up 40 points in order to win.
All right, before we get to our extra fun segment coming up, we have to mention Ali Marpet getting a well-deserved contract extension. I got to come clean. Ali Marpet's one of my favorite guys on the team, always approachable, just a fun-loving guy, always seemingly in a pretty good mood too. And, boy, he's really been a versatile guy for this Bucs team. And I'm sure, this is the first of what we're going to see as more than a few contract extensions for a lot of these young core Bucs players, Roy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good news. I mean, look, he's not just a great guy, but a great teammate. And he's great for a team like the Buccaneers who want versatility out of their offensive linemen because look at him. He's played 3 years in the league. He's played 3 different positions. So he certainly earned the contract, no doubt about it. Everybody knew this one was coming. He will be a leader on this team for many years to come. I believe he and Donovan Smith both will be that. He's another example of, in my opinion, I think Jason Licht doesn't get enough credit for the good work he does in the draft or free agency. To me, it's another winner that he picked. I think he's picked plenty of them. Truth of the matter is, as a GM, if half your picks are good, you're probably well ahead of the game, believe it or not. Very few general managers are at a 75% hit rate with their draft picks or even their free agent signings. It's more like baseball batting average. If you're hitting 333, you're probably leading the league. So you want to do a little bit better than that in football, but 50% is pretty good. And Ali Marpet was one of the guys on the right side of the ledger for Jason Licht for sure.
And Roy, he's also an example of a guy. If you played at a small school, he played at Hobart College. and you can make hay if you have a good Senior Bowl and a good combine. And he's a perfect example. He came out of nowhere, but he shined in the workouts. And I know you're a big part of evaluating that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, look, I don't know how many kids we got out there listening. Hopefully we have thousands and thousands more to come. But here's the thing. If you're a kid, you can make it from anywhere. You don't have to go to Alabama, Florida, LSU. You don't have to go to UCLA or USC. It doesn't have to be a major school. You can go to a Division II school. You can go to a Division III school. And you can make it in the NFL. If you have the talent, the scouts will find you. It's that simple. And Ali Marpet is right now one of the best examples of that ever.
And what I love about Ali Marpet, this is what you – not all pro athletes are like this. He was asked by Buccaneers.com in an interview. I give him a lot of credit. This was funny. How are you going to celebrate this? And he didn't hesitate. He's wearing his Hawaiian shirt, and he said, you know what? I'm real excited because my brother is making tacos and my girlfriend's at home, and I'm going to have tacos when I get home. Spoken like a true offensive lineman, right? And
that, you know what? That's Ali Marpet. He's not soft-spoken, but very easygoing. And he's a great guy, and he's a great ambassador for the Buccaneers team. Like I said, he's a guy, that he should probably be on the face of the building. I would say he should be one of those guys that they celebrate a little bit more. The team and I understand it. They lean towards the stars, the playmakers, the Mike Evans, the Jameis Winstons, obviously. That makes sense. And defensively, McCoy and Levante David and those guys. And I get that. But you know what? Don't be afraid to celebrate an offensive lineman every once in a while, especially if it's a guy like Ali Marpet, who's done so much as a pro athlete and now is doing so much for your team.
And by the way, Ali, I love tacos too. I'm with you, my brother. All right, Justin Thomas, it's time. You know what time it is, baby. Our 3 and Out soundtrack. Once you hear that, folks, admit it. It's in your head for about 3 hours. But that's a good thing sometimes. All right, 3 questions for Roy Cummings, and we are out of here. And I was lucky enough to be in New Orleans for Monday Night Football watching Drew Brees break Peyton Manning's record, becoming the NFL's all-time leading passer. And to put that into perspective, and if you look at NFC South quarterbacks, if they stayed healthy and continued at their current rate in terms of their passing yards per season, Matt Ryan wouldn't break it until 2025. Cam Newton wouldn't break it until 2030, and Jameis Winston 2032. If you throw Jared Goff in there, it would be 2036. So it gives you perspective on how impressive both what Manning has done and what Brees has done. Brees actually passed Brett Favre, who was right behind Manning as well. So my first question in our 3 and Out, Roy Cummings, if you could pick a career, who's had a better career, Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, which is still ongoing right now?
Oh, boy. Man, that's wow. Well,
we're not messing around tonight.
I guess. Look, they're both Hall of Fame careers. You know what? All right, you guys are going to be mad at me again. I'll take.
I know. I'm not surprised anymore.
I'll take Peyton Manning, and here's why. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Peyton Manning transcends the game of football.
Okay.
He is. You don't even have to be a football fan to know who Peyton Manning is now, because he's doing so much. He did all the Papa John's commercials for a long time. He does the nationwide commercials. He's been on Saturday Night Live. Hosted the show. Got one of the funnier segments of all time on there when he's throwing the balls to the kids and then, ripping them for dropping it and stuff. I'm going to go with Peyton Manning, and that's the reason. He transcends the game of football. Drew Brees does as well, but not yet to the degree that Peyton Manning does.
Okay, listen. I almost jumped the gun on my next question. Drew Brees transcends football too, my friend. Okay, Russell Wilson looks up to Drew Brees. You have guys like Baker Mayfield looks up to Drew Brees. Now they transcend football in different ways. I will go this far. If you're talking commercials, Peyton Manning's a no-brainer. Brees' commercials are kind of boring. Peyton Manning is the man. By the way, did a dedication to Drew Brees on the Jumbotron at the game, and he's cutting tomatoes at the table, and a friend off camera says, "Hey, they broke the record finally." And he does this vintage Peyton Manning, great stuff. Personality-wise, it's through the charts with Peyton Manning. Great quarterback, too. But here's how I break it down. Drew Brees is going to own all the records. He'll break Peyton Manning's touchdown record soon as well. He'll own all the records, okay? He also may have another Super Bowl, but to me, they're kind of tied at this point. I don't give much credence to Peyton Manning's second Super Bowl because that was all Denver defense, all right? They went head-to-head, even though it's not head-to-head. But when they met in the Super Bowl, Brees won that one as well. I feel like Brees is more of a clutch player. And to me, just when you look at the broad landscape of what happened in his career, Peyton Manning to me, and maybe it goes back to, whenever there was a big game at Peyton Manning, even when he won that Super Bowl with the Colts, he didn't really win that game. It was more the Colts defense. I feel like Drew Brees, when they won that Super Bowl, it was a lot of Drew Brees. And, oh, by the way, Peyton Manning threw a big pick in that game. I feel like if I needed a quarterback, I would rather have Brees than Peyton Manning in terms of a clutch player as well.
It's a good argument. I don't think there's a wrong answer. It's kind of like there was an old argument a long time ago, and you can still argue it today. Who was the better player? Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle? And they would, and Yankees fans would kind of go back and forth, comparing the stats, comparing the championships, this, that, and the other, all the home runs. And then somebody pointed out, all right, how about this? Mickey Mantle, I don't know, married 3 times or whatever. Joe DiMaggio, married Marilyn Monroe. Game over. That's it. Drop the mic. And that's where I am with Peyton Manning because hosted Saturday Night Live. He didn't marry Marilyn Monroe, but at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I mean, let's see if Drew Brees can host Saturday Night Live some point.
But we're talking football, my friend.
We've decided they transcend football, and therefore you have to go away from football to determine who the greater player is.
Oh, now you're broadening the argument now.
Broadening the argument.
You hate Billy Joel, too, so I'm going to get to Justin Thomas.
No wrong answer. No wrong answer.
It's kind of this argument always comes up.
And Justin's from New Orleans, so he's Peyton Manning's from New Orleans, and Brees.
That's true.
So here we go.
I think when you look at the fact that coming into the NFL, no one gave Drew Brees a chance. Always, about his height. It's always about his height, and I just think when he doesn't have the strongest arm. He may not have the escapability out of the pocket like Aaron Rodgers. But he's probably got to have one of the best QB minds ever. And then when you look at what he's done, especially completion percentage-wise, he leads the NFL in that. NFL history, he's got the highest completion percentage throughout his career. I kind of have to go with Brees. I think Brees has done more with what he has, in terms of his limitations, I guess you would say. I hate to say that, but, than what Peyton Manning had. I think Peyton Manning had better wide receivers. Brees never, up until last year, never had a Pro Bowl receiver.
How about that, Roy?
I just think,
I don't disagree. Justin's making very good points. Drew Brees has had to overcome a lot more than Peyton Manning ever did, just in terms of, what life's thrown at him. Face it, he's not the prototypical quarterback. Never has been. He was hurt at one point. A team sort of kind of gave up on him, but he's bounced back. So, again, my feeling is there is no wrong answer. But at the end of the day, if we all agreed, well, then what fun would that be?
Here's the thing, Roy. Would you give me this? Drew Brees undoubtedly is popular in New Orleans, okay? He's undoubtedly, I think, respected in all the NFC South cities. But nationally, he's always third. It's always been, Brady, Manning, Brees. And now it's Brady, Rodgers, Brees. Do you think he's underrated a tad nationally?
Yeah. Oh, I do. I definitely do. Yeah, I will definitely agree with that. He probably doesn't get enough due. Look, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are surprised that Brees has the record and that Aaron Rodgers doesn't, or that Favre doesn't, or that Brady doesn't anymore. So, I think a lot of people are surprised at that. And, So yeah, I think you're right. I think he is a little bit underrated. I think a lot of people have forgotten about, just how good he really is.
Well, can
Okay,
we?
I'm not.
I was going to say, can we at this moment then revisit what Roy said at the beginning of the season?
Bring it on.
You remember that? Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
play.
You want to compare the stats?
This
It's a
is
wash.
This is what you said, though.
Drew Brees is a talent that is fading in a way, not significantly. Drew Brees is not playing his best football of his career right now. Matt Ryan is. It's a wash.
But would you still, though, having said that, I remember you said Brees will have a down year this year. Next year, Saints are going to go 4-12. Now, who knows what's going to happen the rest of this season? But you got to say, on the trajectory that Brees is going, would you still pick Matt Ryan just for now, this season? I'm not saying going forward for the future. But would you still pick Matt Ryan over Drew Brees?
I'm sticking with my convictions. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I'm sticking with Matt Ryan. Sticking with Matt Ryan.
At least you're a man of your convictions. I can appreciate
but
that.
right now, it's a wash. Look at the numbers. It's a wash. I mean, okay, let's see. Breed.
I'll give you the numbers. How about 4-1? That's a good
Well, not
number.
only that,
Right.
I mean, he's going to...
Okay, well, gee, look what happens when you have a defense.
Well, are you
The
saying
Saints defense is awful.
Yeah, the Saints...
No,
they're playing better, but they're
the
not...
Falcons' defense is awful with a capital A, capital W, capital F.
Here's the intriguing part, guys, and this is the truth. That the Saints, if he was on the board, would have picked him, and he was close to being on the board for them, would have picked this guy over Marshawn Lattimore. Sean Payton was in love with Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Can you imagine if they had Mahomes as the backup right now?
They'd have a real quarterback controversy on their hands, I guess.
Well, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs.
Actually, I guess a great talent would be going to waste more than likely.
Well, but then they wouldn't have had Lattimore. They might not have made the playoffs last year, which means 4 straight losing seasons. Sean Payton may not be there. There's all kinds of things there, too. All right, let's move on. Second question in our 3 and out. I'm going to keep with the quarterbacks, and I'm jumping off the Brees bandwagon for this one. Roy, Justin, who's the best quarterback of all time?
Who wants to go first?
It's about winning Super Bowls in this league, and Tom Brady's got everybody beat there. I'm going with Tom Brady.
Oh, my God, I have to agree with Roy. I will agree with Roy. Tom Brady, I don't know how people argue with this because in this era with, roster shakeups and parity in the NFL, Joe Montana, John Elway, they didn't have to deal with a lot of that. And frankly, if people want to throw Joe Montana out there, he had Jerry Rice. And, Tom Brady never won a Super Bowl with Randy Moss. You take Randy Moss off, look at all the wide receivers Tom Brady won with. I don't know how people argue with Tom Brady.
Yeah, here's
Justin.
I think what Dan Marino did in his time is amazing. But I also have to say, I don't know how high Super Bowl should rank for QBs because, as everyone knows, winning the Super Bowl is a team effort. It's not just a one player. But I also have to go with Tom Brady. I remember the Super Bowl against Atlanta, watching that come back, in my mind cemented the fact that this is the greatest QB who's ever played. I mean, yes, teams have come back from being down by that much or more, but the fact that he did it on that big of a stage when Atlanta had all the momentum, I mean, you could tell he was just willing that team back. That, to me, cemented the fact that this is probably one of the greatest QBs who will ever play the game.
And here's another thing, guys. Think about this. Yeah, the Malcolm Butler play, saved him from probably losing that Super Bowl, but he easily could have had a perfect season. If Eli Manning doesn't make that throw to Tyree, they could have won that one. He came close to winning more.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah, it's a good point.
All right. Well, Roy kind of did a little foreshadowing. He didn't even know.
I noticed that.
He didn't even know it. We got to bring in pop culture in our third question. All right, here we go. You mentioned Saturday Night Live with your boy Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Here's our pop culture question, Roy. I'll let you lead off. And I love the fact that I'll admit sometimes Justin, our producer, we talk about these. Roy has no idea what we throw at him, and that's what makes what Roy does so impressive. Roy doesn't miss a beat, and Roy stands his ground even on Billy Joel versus Elton John and Matt Ryan versus Drew Brees. That's why we love him so much. Stands his ground. Who is the best Saturday Night Live cast member of all time? And you can't say Peyton Manning.
John Belushi.
Oh, wow.
He was part of the group that started it all. To me, he's the Babe Ruth of Saturday Night Live. There were plenty who were maybe funnier, just as funny, had longer runs, but he made it all happen, man. Without Belushi, he was the first one to break out with Animal House. But to me, he's the Babe Ruth of the Saturday Night Live cast members.
Justin?
That is a good one. I'm going to go with one that maybe isn't as popular, as well known. He had a pretty good stretch. I think it was almost close to 10 years. But this is a guy who did so many impersonations, so many characters. He played background characters a lot, but he, to me, is just one of my favorites on SNL, and that is Phil Hartman. He unfortunately, unfortunately, right after he left Saturday Night Live and his career was taken off, he was on news radio. To me, one of the most underrated sitcoms. But his life came to an early end, unfortunately. But I think I'm going to go with him. He's definitely
his impression of Sinatra was one of the best ever.
Yes, yes, it was. And Bill Clinton.
All right,
too.
guys. Yeah, Bill Clinton was really good. Yeah. All right, guys. I love Bill Murray to death. Bill Murray is up there.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point too. I'm going to go off the board a little bit too, maybe slightly. I love Chris Farley. I'm sorry, I just love him. Chris Farley.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. It's kind of like the Peyton Manning, Drew Brees argument, or the Matt Ryan, Drew Brees argument.
That's not hard to argue, but you argue it well.
I feel like Chris Hartley was like a reincarnation of John Belushi in a way. That kind of brilliant blend of physical comedy, but you could also
stage.
Yeah, true. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff, guys. I have an argument with my father a lot, and Justin and I were going to bring this up, but I think it's pointless now. He's a Belushi guy. I'm a Farley guy, but it's like Roy said, it's a win-win situation. They're both funny. They're just, they're both just legendary people in terms of comedy, and tragically, how they both left us too. I hate to think about that. How much work that they could have given us as well. So. But anyway, well, listen, great job, guys. Roy, you hung in there, man. Now you know how I feel when you guys were ganging up on me on the whole Elton John, Billy Joel thing. But that's another rendition of A Few Extra Bucs. We love our title sponsors, House of Brews and Lutz on the corner of Northdale, Mabry, and Van Dyke. And, of course, Sea Dog Brewing Company, great locations in Clearwater and on Treasure Island. We'll be back on Thursday to really dissect the Bucs, taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Big game for the Bucs. Still in the heart of this NFC South. 2-2, even though they have the bad taste in their mouths against the Chicago Bears. But for Justin Thomas, our great producer, for our exceptional Buccaneer insider with his insight, Roy Cummings, we're lucky to have him. I'm merely Mike Nabors. Remember, subscribe to pewterpirates.com, folks. It is absolutely free. This is A Few Extra Bucs. Thanks so much for checking us out.